Hey friends, it's Lauren. Hi, it's the weekend. I have a vacation next week, so I don't know, I'm pretty tired. I'm ready to not be working. And my second book, its deadline is in like a week and a half, so I'm hauling ass on the last couple of chapters and just trying to get things out. You know, some of it is just like a mental blockage. Like I know what I want to say, but like sitting down to actually do it for some reason is just really difficult in the last few weeks. But I wanted to make a video and chat a little bit about working, actually, since that's what I'm talking about offhand. One of the things that often shows up in my inbox or kind of in comments on some of the content I produce, folks often ask about what they can do to turn witchcraft into their job, or like how they can transition into being a professional witch. Even when it's not comments directed at me, I see a lot of material online, usually casually posted in comments on other people's videos or whatever, about the desire to like not have a 9 to 5, to live a magical life, to be a witch full-time, whatever. And I had some thoughts about that. So first of all, I don't think folks realize this, but I'm not a professional witch. I have a 9 to 5. I always have. At no point have I made anything even remotely approaching a living off of anything witchcraft related, social media related, author related. Like none of that stuff even remotely comes close to paying my basic living expenses. You know, like even I think people have this kind of idea that like if you have any kind of following online, and I saw this as a high school teacher, because when we would talk about careers, I worked with juniors and seniors in high school. So, you know, 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds getting ready to go out into the world as adults. And when we would talk about next steps, because most of my kiddos didn't go to college, okay? They went on to, they had other trajectories for their lives. But when we would talk about what comes next, a lot of them would say, well, I want to be a YouTube star. I want to be an influencer. You know, like even before we start talking about like what kind of weirdo niche community like witchcraft or whatever you want to be an influencer in, there's this sense that like if you start a YouTube channel and it's popular, then you don't have to have a job. So, and I'm sure that like at the upper echelons of things that's the case. I mean, of course there are folks like Jenna Marbles, okay, like there are definitely people online who make a lot of money, or at least appear to make a lot of money, as far as I know they do, by being essentially internet personalities. Like that's 100% a thing. But that's such a tiny minority of what's actually going on social media. Even with like monetization on your channel, like a lot of it depends on like who's actually willing to pay to put ads on your channel. And if you're making videos about like weirdo stuff, it's not the advertisers who really pay a lot of money. So just to give you an idea, like I might get, YouTube does like $100 payouts through Google AdSense. Like that's the limit. Like when you hit $100, they cut you a check or whatever. And I might get $100 every like 4 or 5 months. Okay, like it's really just money for like part of a grocery trip, like every few months. It's super negligible, and I really don't think that it's all that different even for folks who have 3-4 times as many subscribers as I do. So yeah, I think that's a fantasy. I think that it would sort of behoove us to to let go. Okay. And it's the same with being an author. The amount of money that I make in royalties, like frankly, it's kind of comical. Okay, like even when you factor in like royalty payments only happen, it's not like they happen every 2 weeks like a regular paycheck or whatever. Like they happen every 6 months, and It's like the way things are kind of backdated. It's just such a small amount of money, and I'm sure it's different for authors who have, you know, a dozen books on the shelves, okay? And my understanding is that a lot has changed for authors with companies like Llewellyn and Weiser since like the 90s. Like I've heard that you could actually make quite a bit of money writing in the 90s and like the early 2000s, but like authors today, you know, it's the idea that like pagan authors are cashing in on paganism is just kind of absurd when you actually just look at numbers and like cost of living. And a lot of the times when people are trying to make a go of being full-time witchcraft or pagan magical occult content creators or authors, a lot of the times one of the things they're doing is they're settling for a relatively low standard of living. And that's absolutely fine, okay? If you're willing to, you know, like if you're willing to pinch pennies and you're willing to like do without, and you're willing to kind of put in that extra work and have additional kinds of like side hustles or whatever, then like it's absolutely possible to make a living doing some of these things. But it really depends on how you define make a living, I think. And to me, one of the reasons why I've opted not to do that, and I feel pretty strongly about it, is because I want to be able to retire, and I want to be able to be a homeowner, and I want investments, and I want to be able to afford to go to a hospital if I ever need to. Like there's kind of a litany of things that I want to be able to afford, and I just haven't found a way to do that without having like a 9 to 5. And I don't know, like, I think that in our communities we have this idea, and this is like capitalism at work, it's not even just witchcraft, like this happens in like art communities and music communities and writing communities, whatever. There's this idea that if you're not paying all of your bills or you're not making a living on whatever your passion is, it must be because you're just not good enough as an artist or as a writer, as a musician, whatever. Like there's this constant pressure everywhere to take your passion and turn it into a hustle, right? And that kind of language is just so manipulative. Like, I don't know, like I really think it just kind of victimizes creators because, like, let people enjoy things. Like, what's wrong with having hobbies? And like even the word hobby just feels kind of dirty to use because the implication is that if it's a hobby, it must be that you just aren't passionate about it or you're not very good at it or something. And the thing that makes it not a hobby is being paid for it. But the idea that like art is only valuable if somebody will buy it, or like writing is only valuable if a mainstream publisher will publish it and then people will buy it. Like those ideas are pushed upon us, I think, by people who want us to buy things. And like it's manipulative and we should feel manipulated by that. And it happens in witchcraft communities too. There's this idea that at some point you're going to know enough, you're going to be good enough and experienced enough as a witch that it's time to like turn it into a business. Where's your witchy biz? Whether that's like being a tarot reader or an author or a teacher or something, like, you know, like who's paying you to be a witch, and that's how you know that you're real. And I just think that that idea is so toxic and it's so harmful. And look, like, I don't like my day job a lot of the time, okay? I think that most working people don't like their jobs a lot of the time, but I feel very lucky to have my job. You know, like, it's not my passion. I don't like dream of it at night and hop up raring to go in the morning to fulfill my life's purpose in my cubicle or whatever. Like, that doesn't happen, okay? But it's such a blessing, especially in the United States, to like have health insurance and have a retirement fund, and to be able to, you know, to know that, like, you know what, if I have a giant emergency, if one of the cats needs to go to an emergency vet, or like I drive a car off of a cliff and I need to replace my car and I've somehow miraculously survived that, Like, I can go do that because I've been working my whole life. And that doesn't make me less of a witch. And if you decide that you also want to work like a straight job, like, that doesn't make you less of a witch or less of an artist or less of a writer or less of a musician or whatever. So anyway, just some thoughts. Like, I don't know, like, lots of people don't like their jobs, okay? And I think that's okay. Like, I think it's okay for your passions to lie outside of what you do for money. It's wonderful when those things intersect, but I think sometimes our expectations are just a little bit unreasonable, which is not to say, like, don't follow your dreams. If you want to make your living as a full-time, like, witchcraft author or teacher or whatever, like, that's cool. But, like, understand, too, that, like, the business of publishing is not the business of witchcraft. Like, running a witchcraft store, a metaphysical store, makes you a professional retailer, right? Like, you have to have business skills on top of magical skills. It's not like those things exist independently. Even if you're making a living as a YouTuber or an influencer or whatever, like, it's really your marketing skills that are defining that game. It's not necessarily like your efficacy as a witch. So this idea that witchcraft is kind of this discrete thing that you can master and then, like, that's your job. No, there's a lot of skills that have to intersect for those things. So anyway, just some thoughts. I think we should be wary about that pressure to turn what we love into money. And if you want to do that, you can do that, cool. But the idea that we're lacking if we don't, I think, is a problem. So anyway, I'm going to stop procrastinating and go write this book now, so I can make loads of money, right? Because that's how that works. Have a good weekend, everybody.